Hello and welcome to this episode of Akrinos Access. I'm your host, Eric Matei, joined today by Eric Levenhagen. Eric is a CPA and founder and principal of ProWise Financial Consulting. And we got an episode of Akrinos Access today as we're going to be exploring this world of profit first and financial harmony for your cold start. Eric, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Akrinos Access.
Great to be back, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hey, look, super pumped for this episode. And to our viewers out there, if you missed the first episode we did with Eric, where he provided us an introduction to the profit first methodology and financial harmony framework, in these next few episodes, we're going to start applying profit first and financial harmony to different phases of the practice lifecycle. So today's episode is all laser focused on profit first and financial harmony for all you cold starters out there. So, Eric, to kick it off, why don't you start off by just maybe providing a recap, an overview of exactly what profit first and the financial harmony framework are?
Yeah, you bet. So we'll start with the financial harmony framework because profit first actually fits into that framework as a component or tool of it, right? So financial harmony, the whole idea here, I mean, there's nothing, when it comes to, setting your goals and running a successful business and all the things that go in with that, and getting to like how you're going to actually coexist with that business and live your life and lead your life. Like there's nothing entirely like new. I mean, numbers are numbers, right? Like we're not changing things, but we need to like organize all that stuff because, people, business owners and myself, I've been subject to this as well. Like we get spread thin and we get our eyes sometimes on the wrong balls. And you know what I mean? We need some focus and a framework to guide us in that. So that's what financial harmony was developed for and was all about is allowing you to have a really successful, improving the financial health of your practice so you can hit your personal goals and achieve them faster than you could on your own. So three main areas that we talk about in financial harmony are your personal prosperity, like what are you working for? What are you building? What do you want to achieve in life? Financial clarity, which is all about business performance and cash flow. That's the piece where profit first comes in. So I'll circle back to that here in just a moment. And then your work-life harmony, right? Like your work, your vision, your time freedom, all those things that go into how you're going to spend your days. Profit first plugs into financial clarity as a component of that, right, is a cash flow management system. It's really, when you boil it down at its simplest form, that's what that system is. Just a way as the dollars come in to redirect them. So we're not always like mentally trying to earmark, do I have enough for this, that, and the other thing, right? It gives you some semblance of real organization and clarity around the cash you have on hand and the cash you have coming in. And if you're going to be able to achieve your goals using that and how you're going to deploy those dollars to hit your goals and be successful.
I really like how you framed that up, that the financial harmony framework is all about cohabitating with the business, right? and realizing it's around this framework that we kind of have these three pillars. It's going to be personal prosperity, and that's going to vary, right? I mean, some of you out there are looking to, accumulate mass wealth for yourself. Others of you are looking to accumulate mass wealth to support those philanthropic organizations that you're fond of. But regardless, we've got personal prosperity, pillar number one. Pillar number two, financial clarity, which is all about cash flow and the profit first method, right? Being more organized with the planning and I suppose the allocation of funds. And then third, that work-life harmony. And Eric, I know before we hit record here, that's a big world of what Akrinos does, right? In helping doctors be more strategic and effective in run the operations of their practice. So really, really fascinating world here. We're talking about profit first and financial harmony and the implications to the modern optometry practice. So as it were, what do you say we now kind of take this model, and why don't you walk us through how this is to be applied and optimized for that doctor who's maybe just cold started their practice or in the kind of those early years of business ownership?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, there's, like we were talking about before, right? There's three main pillars of this financial harmony. There's three subsections of each, and some of those are, um, most all of them are ongoing, and just depending on what phase you're in, you do the same thing or look at the same area through a different lens or different light, and depending on where you're at, and it's going to look a little bit different. So we realized we needed some kind of roadmap journeys for folks to really dial in and organize based off where you're at. So for somebody just starting out in business, really where we're going to start with that is something we call our life goal map, which is a different way of plotting out your personal goals, because we need to know what we're building. Like, this is the whole starting with the end in mind, right? You need to know
Sure.
what you're building before you start building it. And so many people get into business and they get excited and they think they know. Like, for me personally, right? I knew kind of at the outset 15, 16 years ago what I wanted this practice to look like. When I started from day one, I knew it was going to look a little bit different than what I had envisioned, right, it to look like in 10 years. I knew that kind of inherently, but I didn't take time enough to think about, how am I going to take what I got to start with today and eventually transmorph it into what my vision is, right?
Sure.
And how's that? So 2-3 years in, I realized that I was not on that track. I was not on the right track for myself. I was building a tax shop like a lot of other CPAs get kind of stuck in with long hours, overloaded, too many clients, that sort of thing. So just to say, I've been through this and lived it to know that if we don't know what we're building offhand at the start, then we may not like where we end up, right? So we're going to start there, and that also allows us to kind of take those goals and align them with the revenue goals that we're going to need this year, and then we can start to plot out what that looks like in 3 and 10 and 10 years and more into the future, depending on the life cycle of the supposed life cycle of your practice, right? So aligning those goals and just all this getting more clear on this vision allows you to guide your infrastructure decisions that will come up in the next phase, which is kind of setting up your financial foundations, right? So here's where we're establishing. So a lot of times, the typical accounting speak here is a pro forma. When I talk about pro forma and forecasted financials, I use a little bit different terminology just so that it hits a little bit differently, because pro forma and forecast sound like it's like a step, that's like a chore I got to do in order to see how if this business is going to work. What we're really doing is developing a plan that's going to speak to how it's going to spider out into and spread out into how you're going to run the practice, what type of decisions you have to make, what type of team you need, the equipment, the space, all of these things, right? We want to make sure on paper it's doable and feasible before we actually go out and start signing up for a lot of big decisions that are hard to reverse or painful to
Absolutely.
reverse, right? So we get all that going. Within this is our owner compensation strategy, right? So we need something there. Everybody, when you're just starting out, depending on where you're coming from, your stage in life, everybody has a different runway, if you will, for how long they have until this business needs to replace a certain level, if not all of their income, right? So it's going to change for everybody. It's going to depend on, do you have other sources of income? Are you married and you have that income coming in? Are you going to be able to survive off of either, if you're single, zero income, or those other income sources? So there's a whole bunch of variables here, but we have to define that and define okay, what is the runway that you have? You may have savings, you may have a working capital loan that you're starting out with, you may have those other sources of funds, but eventually those are going to run out, and eventually this thing needs to be sustainable. So how long do we have until we kind of hit those breaking points, and how are we going to achieve that? Because I've seen a lot of business owners get into it, and they may be 5-10 years in, and if something goes wrong, or something is not panning out the way they thought it would, one of the first things when funds get short, one of the first things that they cut, outside of truly discretionary spending, and they might reel it in a bit, but then the biggest core thing that gets cut is their own pay. They're not paying themselves regularly enough. So we want to plan for that, right? And make sure that you're going to be taken care of, because the more this sounds like a lot, but really when it all comes together, the more planning you can do around this piece of having some financial clarity involved, it relieves a certain level of stress. And financial stress is, it seeps into everything, right? So
Sure.
kind of take this off of your plate and know that you've got a workable plan to pay. All the bills are going to get paid. You're going to get paid. Your team's going to get paid. You're going to have money left over throughout this whole system. And when you have to go file taxes, maybe not in year 1 or 2, because you got some big deductions in there that may take care of that. But once you get beyond that, right, we got to make sure those are covered as well. And so all these little financial stressors, take that off your plate and allow yourself to really, focus on the business, on developing your team, on, taking the best care of your patients, all of those other things that kind of, even at a subconscious level, can get impacted negatively when you've got all these financial stressors in the background, right? Not to say that we're going to relieve it completely, but it's going to be a lot less if you have this plan in place. And then you can focus on building out your team, your systems. We talked about it before: staffing, equipment, and marketing to support growth. If we know kind of what our phase 1 goal is, right? I call it our core break even, because accounting break even is, if you go and look it up, or unless you know what it is already, core break or accounting break even is revenue equals expenses. That's the definition of it, right? When we're planning, it's yeah, okay, that's cool. I've got everything covered except for I haven't paid myself. I don't have anything saving for the future. It's why do I set that up as a goal? So we call it core break even. So when we overlap profit first into this, right? Profit first, again, the main components, and there's more detailed versions of it, but the core components of it are profit, which is your retained earnings or your free cash flow that we're going to actually physically capture, instead of getting to the end of a month, quarter, or year and looking at the bottom line of your P&L, and then looking at your bank account and wondering where all that went, right? So
yeah,
free cash flow, taxes, owner's comp, operating expenses. And we want to set initial goals for all 4 of those, and then back into that revenue number that's needed. Make sure that's feasible and doable based off of the infrastructure you've invested into, meaning your overhead and your space and your equipment and your team and everything else that goes along with it. And make sure that we can fund all of those initiatives, because they're all important and they all need to be there. And once we can kind of hit that point, that's our phase 1 revenue goal, our core break even, that then we can say, okay, once I hit this, I know that I can, I'll have the funds and I'll have the momentum there to start building out other things to take us along this path that we set up in the first phase, right, in that life goal map. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Eric. And I think that's one thing I'm noticing here is we're talking about, once again, this application of profit first and financial harmony for the new practice or the cold starter. Hey, maybe you're out there and you haven't even gotten on this path to cold starting yet. And in all likelihood, it's probably some of these things that Eric is referring to that perhaps may be the culmination of that fear, really driving that fear, keeping you from it, right? Is what's going to happen? Where's the money going to come from? How much money am I going to need coming into this practice to make it not only financially sustainable for the business? And I really like how you point out that difference between the accounting break even and the core break even, right? Because the accounting break even is simply, can you keep the lights on and see patients tomorrow? But that core break even, that's going to be, hey, if I'm going to go in cold start, that means I'm leaving the job at the private equity office that I've been working in, or the corporate office, or that hospital system I've been working in. But I love in hearing as you were kind of walking through this, Eric, really tying it back to it really starts with planning and setting some goals, right? So starting with that life goal map. So understanding exactly where are we going? Because until we kind of know where we're wanting to go, what we're wanting to create, it's tough to really kind of put these building blocks in place.
Mhm.
You also mentioned that whenever someone finds themselves stuck, it's typically because they don't have that life goal map kind of lined up. But from there, building on that, you were talking about the financial foundations. I love hearing that because Eric, as you know, here in Akrinos, business foundations, that's the strategic business plan. You know, when we can work with doctors all over the country utilizing business foundations, the business plan, not only get that cold start off the ground, but to maximize the potential of those peak earnings years and even plan kind of some of those mature years. So lining up the financial foundations with the business foundations, the operational pieces. There's something else you mentioned, I think that's really, really powerful, and that is what is the owner comp strategy going to be? You know, Eric, in our work, we work with a ton of cold starts, and that is absolutely always a part of that consideration, right? What is that owner comp strategy? But oftentimes, it's not until you've taken the time to create that big life goal map that we really can feel fully comfortable, fully confident in stepping into it. Really, really great pearls here regarding applying profit first and financial harmony to the cold start. So Eric, as far as what would you say are just a couple of best practices for those listeners out there that are maybe a few years into that cold start, or maybe those that are considering making that step into the cold start? What are a few best practices they should kind of keep at the forefront in wanting to really apply profit first and financial harmony to their practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just boils down to kind of what we were talking about. Know what you're building first before you start making those kind of irreversible or painful to reverse decisions, right? It's just like it's no different than anything else, really. It's like architects don't go into a project not knowing what they're going to build, right? So you got to know for yourself, like, is this a lifestyle type of practice? Is this a big multi-location conglomerate? Is it something in between? Like, got to know if you're building a comfy townhouse or the Taj Mahal before you start, right? So keep that in mind. Really work on, and one of the things that we do a lot with cold starts and people just starting out is having somebody else who's kind of unattached emotionally look over when you get to that pro forma stage, right? Because a lot of times, just again, depending on circumstances, you may or may not be investing a ton into help here, but get help with that piece from somebody who's done it and who's unattached emotionally from it, that can help guide you and poke holes in your financial plan there, right? Especially for those first couple of years. And if you're already a couple of years into it and there's still stressors about it, like, it's not too late to get that help and kind of write that picture before it gets too much further down the line and you keep stressing out about it. So those are a couple of the big things I'd start with.
Yeah, fantastic. Eric, really, really great insights here in this episode of Akrinos Access. Exploring this world of profit first and financial harmony for the modern cold start. Eric Levenhagen, really, really powerful insights here, helping doctors get on that right track from day one with their practice. Before we wrap up, how can folks get in touch with you, learn more about this world of profit first and financial harmony, and maybe see about working with ProWise Financial?
Yeah, for sure. I think the best way to do it, of course, we have our email. You can always email me. But if you want to take a kind of look behind the scenes first, we have a complimentary assessment on our website. It's Financial Harmony Assessment at prowisefinancial.com. Just go there, hit the Get Started Here button, and it'll take you through an assessment where you can self-assess yourself and your practice, and through all the stages of financial harmony, and kind of start to get some insights that way for free, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Access. And for all you viewers out there, you're looking to cold start, you're in those early years of practice ownership, got some great ways we can help you make it happen. And Eric Levenhagen and the team at ProWise Financial Consulting, from an accounting and financial standpoint, remarkable things to keep you in line. And Y'all know here at Akrinos, we love working with cold starts, writing business plans, working with doctors through and through. As a matter of fact, we just had another cold start open here just last week. Go check out cnbcanatl.com. Practice of Dr. Madison Barnes in Atlanta, Georgia. Mr. Levenhagen, thank you again so much for joining us here on Akrinos Access. And look forward to having you back on the next episode, where we're going to take these concepts of profit first and financial harmony, and we're going to apply it to the practice in those peak earnings and growth years. So, Eric, look forward to catching you back here on Akrinos Access real soon.
Sounds good, Eric. Thanks so much.
Thank you.